Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So in the previous video, you saw me over here on the shaper, getting the bottom of our dynamic jaw cut in right here, nice and flat. We got that completed, so we're gonna move on to the two sides. We're gonna go ahead and do those in the shaper as well, but we're not gonna cut them all the way to the finished size because I wanna finish them in the CNC mill. But the reason why we're gonna go ahead and get these cut now and at least get them machined is so that we have nice square edges that we can rotate this part in the vise to be able to square it up properly whenever we're going to either be putting it in a vise or a mill table to finish out the machining. So let me get in here a little bit closer and I'll show you what we're talking about. These two sides here are as cast, and we need to get those machined so that we can hold this securely for the rest of the machining that we want to do. The problem that I have is the angle in which this is cast right here. We're gonna bring you over here to our sample on the table. All right, so you can see that the way it's made, it's got this angle here. So you can definitely, on the shaper, you can turn your vise so that your tool is in line with this right here. But what that does is you have to adjust your stroke to accommodate from this point to where this point's gonna be out here. So you have a lot of air that you would be cutting if you're doing it at an angle like this in order to cover that. All right, so we're not gonna worry about that. We're just gonna line up our vise 90 degrees to the cutter, and all we wanna do is just simply clean this up down to about this point right here. So we're not gonna take a lot, but we'll just take a nice cut across there to clean it up, maybe 50 thou or whatever, and clean that up. That way we got a machine surface, we can rotate it, machine it, rotate it, machine it, and that way you have a properly squared up workpiece in the vise, all right? Because I want to be able to clamp this in the vices over on the CNC mill and be able to finish this out just like they've got done here. You can see that they use a mill, so they come down and make a cut, they make another cut there, and they come across this angle. So super easy. It won't take but just a couple minutes to get that done. I'd like to do that on our Meltronics because it's fun. I'm practicing, learning how to write programs, and I want to see that machine do a little work on this guy there as well. But to get to that point, I want to get them squared up nicely so that whenever we put it in a vise, we know that we're holding the workpiece square. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out, get everything reset. We'll bring it back, and we'll go ahead and start cutting in our two sides there. So we just got her laid over. And down in here, what I would like to do is we're going to use these parallels here, and we'll actually set the casting on this bottom lip right here where we just machined at, so that we know that this is going to be in line with this machine right there. If we lay it in there just where we're at, you're relying on just as the cast surface, and you don't know if you're going to be lined up perfectly on that machined edge there. So we'll get this picked up, set it on this parallel, and in the front side right here, the way you do that, we'll just go ahead and slide it over some so you can see. You'll use the rod here on this side, pushing against the cast right there. That way you're on one point of reference across there, and it'll push it flat against the machine surface there on the back side. So we have our parallels down here. We'll go ahead and get the part. We're just going to tilt it up and set it on that ledge. I've already wiped everything out, so everything should be good and clean. All right, now on this side, we've got some more parallels here that we're going to set down in here. And these are perfect because they put it right at the middle, about the midpoint of the thickness of the jaw here. These parallels are just to hold the bar. All right, so this is what I always use. We can just set it right there. I just center it up on the vise jaw, and I'm going to go ahead and run the jaw in, and you'll see what it's going to do is it'll pick this up, and it's going to push flat against this back area that we just shaped. Just like that right there. All right, so you can see that the rod is about halfway down the casting there, which is actually the tallest point because it is tapered a little bit. And if we look back here, So we're pushed up flat against our fixed jaw there on a machined face. So we're going to be referenced a machined surface there. We're sitting on our parallels, and we'll go ahead and I'll tap this here with our soft blow just to make sure that it is seated good, but that should be good right there. And that is how they teach you in the books, how to square up something in a vise whenever you're going to go to square up a square workpiece. Get one side machined, rotate it against the fixed jaw, machine it, rotate it, machine it, rotate it, and machine it. So that's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to go ahead and rotate this vise around here 90 degrees. So we're going to just be making a shortcut across here using the shaper. Okay, we've got our vise swung around here. It's actually on 0 degrees now. We were on 90, 0 degrees. And I want to point out, when we went ahead and started up the shaper, it's always important on these old shapers that you fire them up and you let them run for, I don't know, about 5 minutes or so. And even in the manuals it tells you to do this. And the reason why is because the oil pump is pumping the oil up to the top of these ramways. Here, I'll show you. You can see this is one of our view sites right here for the oiler. All right, you can see that one pumping really well. All right, and there's 2 more on the other side. So what that's doing is it's pumping oil up and it's getting on all of the rotating parts and then flowing back down. And that way, whenever you start this, you're not starting it dry. So start it up, let it run for about 5 minutes while everything starts getting oiled. I like to do that as I'm getting things set up. So that's 5 inches right there. So we're gonna set our stroke length to 6 inches. That'll give you a ½ inch on both sides right there. So this is where we adjust our length of stroke. We still got it set to just over 29 from our last right there. So I need to go ahead and shorten it. And this is how you shorten it right there. And you know, while we're doing this, it might be interesting. I haven't shown the bull gear crank mechanism work on this in a very long time. So before we actually get it all the way down here to our 6 inches, how about I give you guys a shot, for those who have not seen that yet, on how the inside of the shaper works and how it actually operates the ram. So that's set on 24 inches. We'll just use that right there. And then this is your feed right here. We were set at 100,000 step over. We'll bump that one back down and readjust it wherever we need to once we start. All right, let's give you guys a little preview of the gearbox inside there. Go ahead and engage it. So we're running nice and slow, so it's kind of easy to follow and see what's happening here. So I've already got the side cover off. We got a light there so you guys can see what's happening. And let's take a look at the magic right here. It's gonna be loud, so I'll try to talk over you here. So we'll try to explain a little bit of what you see. The big round gear, that's called the bull gear. This is I believe this is considered the crank arm right here. See that block and that pin? The pin's connected to the bull gear and it's inside that block. And so you have 360 degrees of rotation. 220 degrees of that rotation is this right here. That's your cut stroke. 140 degrees is this right here, the return stroke. So as it goes around and comes back down to the bottom, you have a much faster return because you're closer to the pivot point of the connecting arm right there. It's very simple engineering in the way it was designed, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It really is. And I know it's a little bit hard to see it all, but in the middle there, that's where you adjust your stroke length right there. And what that's going to do, that's going to adjust your sliding block. I believe they call that your vibrating block on this right here. So the further one way that you are, the more stroke length you're going to have on the cut stroke there. But hopefully you guys kind of get a little better understanding of how the shaper actually operates. The crank arm here is connected to the ram up top. And then of course back there, that's your transmission. So that's your gear changes. You can see our oil pump is working good. It's giving the gears a constant oil bath. The mechanics that built all these machines back in the day, they did a beautiful job. Another cool feature of the shaper, you can actually adjust this stroke length as it's running. You can see it's just going to rotate. All right, 6-inch stroke length. So now we got to get our stroke length positioned where we want to, depending on where the workpiece is. So that, I've got it to where it's all the way back. I've sped it up a little bit too, because we're going to be running it a little faster. So that's about the end of the stroke. Loosen this guy right here. Use this crank handle here. I have to move this handle out of the way. Just going to give that a try. I'm just going to snug that, and I'm going to watch it right here. That looks pretty good. It actually go a little bit, just a little bit more. That looks pretty good. And then once you get it where you got it, just make sure that this is tight. I just like using my salt blow. I just give it a few bumps like that, and that should be ready to go. I've got the table positioned on your Z height where I want to. So I've learned the hard way by not doing this a few times. Luckily, I've never broken or tore up anything. But you always need to tighten up your knee here. So you have a bolt on this side. I usually start with that one. You also have one more right here. That's going to pull this up against these ways right here nice and tight. Now you have one more right here. This is your support. You tighten that up. And the last thing you got to remember to do is this has automatic rapid, or it has rapid traverse up and down when you pull this handle right here. And that's this lever back here, you can't see it. You got to make sure this is in neutral, and this is where I've messed up quite a bit. I still had this lever where it was either feeding up or down, and whenever I can go engage the, when you turn it on, if that's engaged, it's going to be feeding this table up or down every stroke. And I've done that several times and realized, wait a sec, I got to stop and reset this. And I'll loosen everything up, retighten it, make sure this is in the neutral position, this feed lever back here, and then I have to start over. So just something that you learn from experience when you run these machines there. I've got our transmission set in 58 strokes a minute. Do the calculation for the proper speed, it should be at 70, and I actually have a 70 on here. The problem with this, and I've talked about this in past videos, is that this transmission is not in the best condition at all. And if you run it too fast, it actually throws itself out of gear in the middle of a cut. So it actually works better on the lower speeds, especially if you have a long stroke there. It just kind of beats itself to death. So I've got it set at this speed right there, and I'm comfortable with that. 58, because I think if I go up, the next one up is going to be 70, and I just think if I run 70, it's not going to work real well. So I think that's the speed that we're going to run it for this operation here. Go ahead and get our tool touched off. So I decided I'm going to take 50 thousandths, and that's going to be, we'll just take 50 thou off this side, and if it cleans it up good, and then we'll rotate and do 50 off the bottom there. We got about 300 thousandths total that's got to come off this thickness. Just manually down feed the head just a little at a time. Make sure nothing's feeding down there. All right, it just started. It's touching about half of it right there. Take the tool off the side. We're clear. And then we'll set a cut here. $10, $20, $30, $40, $50. Get it locked in and then remove the backlash. All right, we should be ready to go. Let's give it a go. I think I'm gonna go 30 thousandths step over. Bump that up one. And engage our feed. So far, so good. It's always good practice to stand here with your hand on the clutch just in case there's a problem as soon as it starts and you can stop it. One thing I realized after we started here, I've got to be careful and make sure that we don't start crashing into this part of the vise jaw on the side of the tool head there. So we're going to keep an eye on that as we get closer to it. I think there's going to be enough clearance there, but this is the kind of stuff you just always got to be mindful of. Looks like we have plenty of clearance here against our jaw. We shouldn't have to worry about hitting it. I'm just watching it come to where I want it to stop feeding, right to the corner of that triangle. And we'll stop the feed and then stop the ram. All right, right about there. Stop feed. Okay, man, beautiful. It worked perfect. It definitely got lighter on the cut as it got down here. It was just barely starting to clean up this down here. So it was a little bit, maybe it's a little thicker down here on the end of where we started our cut. We can do a quick check right here with our calipers to see what our depth is from this point to that machine shoulder that we previously did. Oh, I think I bumped it. Let's try that again. Let's just say about 575. And do the same thing down here. $620. So right at 50 thousandths. So our cut pattern and color looks really good right there. But as we get further down, you can see that it was getting shallower, so it was just barely cleaning that up. So I think I want to take another 25 thousandths, and hopefully that'll make this look a lot more even right here and have a nice even cut pattern all the way down to the length there. And don't let this a little bit bother you right there. That's going to get machined off whenever we go to the mill machine with that. Remember, we just want a nice square side to be able to clamp against in the vise. We got our 25 thousandths depth of cut set, and we're ready to repeat it. So here we go. All right, so that was our second pass there, and I like the way that cut pattern looks in it. Everything looks nice and even. It's really beautiful. I mean, this is just one of the things that I love about a shaper. It just leaves a beautiful tool mark in your workpieces. If that's your thing, if you like linear cut patterns, but happy with it. So we're gonna call this side finished where we're at. So again, this is rough finished. We're gonna end up finishing that on the mill, so it'll all be cut at the same time. And I know some of you guys are, this is bothering you. And yes, technically, you could rotate the vise around here and cut that off, but you have to reset the the ram position on where this is going to be, and you got to touch your tool off again. So it's not worth it to me to worry about that little bit. If we were going to be finishing this on the shaper, I would certainly finish that out like it is, but we have what we need so that we can easily clamp this in a mill vise or over on a mill table or something like that. So that is good. We're going to have to file it though. So we'll flip this thing over and repeat it on the other side. All right, we got this thing rotated around. There's our freshly cut side right here that we're going to lay down. That's the side that we want everything to be squared up against. That side there. Tilt it up onto our parallels. Look like a chip right there. All right, just like that. We'll set our other parallels back in here. Before I tighten everything up, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to be cutting from this side going that way. And the last one, it was real close to the limit there. So I want to make sure that the workpiece is actually centered in the vise where it needs to be before I tighten it all the way up. So I'm going to reset our tool, get it where I want it, and then I'll retighten this if we don't have to readjust that. So we'll have to swing our clapper box the other way here. All right, and I've already got our tool. I honed up both edges before we started there, so we're going to be using the right-hand side. Get this repositioned back in there. Just past 90 degrees, the tool placement there, and that is in case it tries to start digging the tool in. If it's past 90 degrees, it's going to basically swing up out of the way. If you're ahead of 90 degrees, it's going to try to dig in if it tries to move on you. Man, I was going to try to enjoy some fresh air in here, but it's like the concrete just blows out the video when I'm trying to film this. So I'm just checking. That's going to be basically the end of our cut there. This does have a clutch in it, so you're not necessarily going to damage it if you run it to the end of the travel there. It'll just clutch out on you. But what I like to do when you get out here close to the end of the travels, I just like to hand crank it. And we're clear in there. So I know we're good to go. So we got to tap this down, make sure we're square, retighten the vise, and we'll start our cuts on this side here. We're ready to start our cut. We'll get it touched off and get a depth set. I did a measurement with approximately 70 thousandths. Got to come off to match the other side. Making sure we weren't feeding there. All right. All right, it's touching out here. Bring it off the workpiece. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Go ahead and reset a 0. We'll take a 50 thou cut, we'll just repeat what we did. 50 thou cut, and then we'll clean it up with whatever we need to remove after that. Okay, everything's looking good. So I've already measured this. We're going to try to equalize it here using a depth mic, and measured up to that step on the back side. And I was measuring around 550, 551. Yeah, so about 550. All right, and I wrote that down, just showing you how we got our measurement. And this should be a distance greater than that. All right, so that is going to measure, let's see if we're past the, nope, so that's 598 thousandths. 2 more would be 6. Yeah, so we're at 598. 48 thousandths is what we got to come off of that. Another backlash out, so we're going to go 48. 10, 20, 30, 40, 2, 4, 6, 8. All right. Move the backlash, and we are ready to cut. All right, let's give it a check with our depth mic. Remember, this side measured 550 thousandths to that step. So let's see what we get here on this guy. All right, looks like we hit 548, just past 548, so less than 2 thousandths difference right there, which is going to be perfectly acceptable. Very cool. Finish looks good on that side too. I'm happy with it. All right, our shaper work is finished up. We're gonna go ahead and pull it out of there. This face right here, we could technically cut using our tool head and our vertical down feed, but there's really no point in even cutting that. There's no reference off this back end, and it's up inside the hardtail vise, and you never see it once it's put together. So I'm not gonna worry about spending time on that end right there. It would be fun to do that, but I just decided against it. Oh man, that's tight. I got a cheater pipe here that I use for this handle here. That was close. Well, that's going to wrap up this video and the shaper work and the shaper footage that I wanted to do on this dynamic jaw. And I'm real happy with the way it turned out there. So now we have 3 nicely machined sides that we can reference whenever we go to finish our top, and we want to set it back in the mill vices to be able to finish out these sides. So I measured that with some calipers, and you're right at 150 thousandths away from being on the total thickness there. So we got 75 thousandths per side, and that's going to be a real simple op that hopefully we can accomplish in our Miltronic CNC mill. We'll design a program using Fusion of this particular shape right here, and I'm going to set up 2 mill vices that we can set it in there and just duplicate this shape right there. And I'm excited to get to that. But from here, what I'd like to do is go ahead and take this down to our Kearney and Trecker horizontal milling machine and go ahead and get this surface machined right there. I actually have a nice big old school, I believe it's like a 6-inch or bigger face mill that we'll be able to use to come in here and mill this right here. And then we'll be able to go ahead and just finish that. Once we mill the surface, we've got a dimension that we can go ahead and establish off of that. And then once we get this surface machined, then we can reference our dimensions to the jaw area that has to be machined there, because it's measured off of the top of the jaw right there. All right. So we won't be able to get all the way underneath this jaw right there. I don't know, maybe you guys can see on the sample here that even whenever they manufacture this, they can't reach all the way back up in here and get that to the very back end. But they go far enough back so that any work that you put inside the vise right here, if you want to bring it down and set it on this jaw, this is still a machined area that you can do that. All right, but I just don't have a large enough cutter that's going to reach all the way in there and clear the tool whenever it's over here doing its thing. So we'll just kind of mimic what they got right there, but we'll be able to go as far back as we can and clean as much of this top surface up as we can whenever we do that. So I'm excited to get over there on the mill and start. I got to get it broken down, and we'll be able to start getting this guy set up and carry on with our machining for our dynamic jaw. And then some of you probably been wondering about the main vise body right here. You know, we've already done a bunch of the machining on that. We still need to go and do our internal shaping on this guy right there. But what I was wanting to do was go ahead and get this machined and get it machined to size. And then whenever we do, I'll have a good dimension that we can come in here and do our internal cutting on that and hopefully hit our target so that our dynamic jaw will have a nice fit through there. All right. So I hope you've been enjoying this series. As I'd mentioned in the beginning when we first started on episode 1, this is going to be a fairly long running series because we have a lot of different setups and a lot of different operations and different machinery that I'm wanting to use to build this. This is a personal project that I'm doing for fun, and I'm not worried about how much time it takes to do this. There's been concerns about, you know, why would you do things a certain way when you can do it this way and get it done a lot faster? That's not what this project is about. This is about me enjoying my shop and my machines and my tools and my measurements and being able to just have fun making a piece. I'm not worried about how long it takes to do this. But the other takeaway from this is that you can see the challenges that one would be confronted with when you're dumped off all these different parts that you have to machine from a raw casting. There's a lot of different setups, a lot of different operations that you have to consider whenever you're doing a production run on something like this, and you got to get them done very quickly. That's a different animal from what we're trying to do right here. I'm just trying to have fun, enjoying building this hardtail vise and creating content and video to share with my viewers out there, and hopefully they're enjoying it the same way I am. Okay, so I hope you come on back for some more. Next video, we'll be down there on the Kearney and Trucker, finishing out the milling of the top side of the vise here, or the top of the dynamic jaw, should I say. All right, we'll see you guys later.